What is going on, everybody? I'm Tyler and welcome back to the shop. Today I'm going to take a few minutes and show you my process for taking rough lumber off of the lumber rack and turning it into beautiful S4S or surfaced on four sides, ready for whatever project we're about to undertake. Now, you do need a couple of pretty substantial pieces of machinery. Right behind me here, I have a beautiful 15-inch helical head grizzly planer, and then further back here I have a helical head 8-inch parallelogram jointer. Those are not inexpensive pieces of machinery, so if you don't have those, obviously you're going to be using slightly different material than I'm going to be showing you right here, and unfortunately this video isn't for you, but if you want to stick around to see the process, let me show you what I do. And why do I like to use rough sawn lumber? It's cheaper, and for the amount of material that I go through, I have the machines already. It's just the way to go. So as I mentioned, surfaced on four sides, S4S, means that it's ready to go. That is what a piece of oak or a piece of poplar that you would get from the home center, or a piece of pine that you would get from a home center. Back in the finished materials section of your home center, you are going to get S4S material. So every S that you add to the material, you add cost to that. So if you get S2S, which is going to have one face and one side cut, I don't even know if you can get that, but that's going to be cheaper than S3S or S4S material. So S4S, you do a run on the jointer, you do a side on the jointer, then you do the opposite side on the planer, and then you do your final side on the table saw, or probably for a production machine shop, they're going to be using a straight line rip saw. You might remember I said I had an 8-inch jointer, but there's one board here that's well over 8 inches, and there's two other ones that are awfully close. And I'm going to put those on the bottom of my pile because I have a little trick there. I've done a complete video on just this process, so I'm going to go over it kind of quickly, but I will do these at the end, and you'll see me remove the guard. And if you want to watch that other video, it'll make a lot more sense for you. Now, these pieces are currently 96, 97 inches long, and with my shop, I can't actually get that width. So we got to do a quick visit to the miter saw, where we're going to cut these down to 94 inches, which I know I can get on the jointer. And if I move my planer out to a tape mark I have right here, I can get 94 inches through the planer very, very easy. I also see I have a crack down on the end right here. We want to whack that off to make sure we're not running through this very, very dense material through our sharp blades, dulling them, making us happen to replace them sooner. So this is the jointer. Now, most of you on this channel probably know what this is. If you don't have a machine like this, you can do a lot of the work with the planer, but this just makes it much faster. And I do understand that both of these machines are not cheap. A lot of people probably don't have them, but I'm going to kind of explain how it works anyway. So this is an 8-inch jointer. As I said, it has a helical head, which means these are carbide tip rotatable. So you actually have 4 different cutting surfaces on here. As one gets dull, you rotate instead of having to replace the whole blade. And it doesn't cut on an angle, but it cuts one blade at a time, which takes a little bit of load off of your machine, although it is a constant cutting surface that's in contact with wood. So what does this machine do? If you look very, very closely, you can see that this is the outfeed table, is about 1/8 of an inch or less than that probably, depending on the setting that we have for the cut depth right here. So there is a difference right here. This table is higher than this one. So when you bring this piece of material, and as you can see, this is not how I would typically run this through the jointer. It would be like this. But if you look right here, we have a big old bow in this piece of wood. So what are we gonna do? When we run it through the blade, we're going to remove a portion of the wood right here, and then that's going to ride on the outfeed table, which is higher than this one, replacing the material cut away by the blade. And then as we move through the material, we're going to not cut anything in the bow, and then we are going to again remove the section of wood on the backside, the trailing edge of this, and then we're going to rest on the outfeed table. We still have the gap. We'll bring it back and repeat it again until this board is flat. Then when we have this portion flat, we're going to take that side, we're going to set it up against this fence of the jointer. Let's just pretend right here that this is flat. This is the piece we just flattened. It's flat up against our fence, which we know is 90 degrees. Then we're going to go ahead and run this through the planer again and flatten this side if it was a rough edge. And then we can move on to the planer, and we'll explain that process in just a minute. As I am making this cut, I do want to make mention that there's no guard on the jointer right now. This is not typically how I use the tools, and I don't necessarily recommend using your tools without the guards in place, but for video purposes, I wanted to remove that. And when I demonstrate the wider than my jointer technique, you have to remove the guard to do that. Use caution. You guys are smart. If you have these tools, you know how to use them. Be careful. At this point, we are looking at S4S Lumber. We have one large face and one side perpendicular to that, which we did over on the jointer. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we have some boards that are wider than the jointer, and I made a video back in the day specifically to talk about this technique, and you can find a link to that video down in the description below. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any great content. Then we will take that piece that we now have two faces flattened using the jointer. We're going to lay that the larger fat face down on the planer, run it through this machine, which is then going to go through and cut away the thickest part down to the lowest part to make this perfectly parallel to one another. Now we got this side, we got the bottom, and we got this side all surfaced. These are parallel with each other. This one is 90 degrees. Now we need to get this last side, so we're gonna run our nice straight edge up against the fence of the table saw, square up that last edge. Because this is ripping long ways down the grain of the wood, you do wanna make sure you have a proper ripping blade. These are gonna have much bigger teeth and less of them to allow you to remove all of those shavings of material. So that's the kind of blade you want. Let's do some cutting. Well, there we are, guys. Surfaced on 4 sides hickory. We got some beautiful wood in there under that rough covering that we took off of the lumber rack. It's one of my favorite aspects of woodworking right there. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I think it went a little bit long. I'm doing this outro before I do any editing, so I don't really know how it works out, but I think it's gonna end up being a little bit longer than I expected, a little more informal, but I hope something useful for everyone out there. If you did find something useful, please hammer that thumbs up button as it helps us out and gets this video in front of more eyes. I'm DIY Tyler, like it says right here. You guys have a good one.